So with that said, I'm going to get started. My name is Carlos Martinez, and I'm the President and CEO of the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. I know some of you, and some of you I have not met before, so welcome. The Latino Community Foundation is a foundation that's not endowed and that raises money every year to invest in the Latino community and in communities of color. Our investments are focused around building the capacity of leaders, of individuals, of nonprofit organizations, and communities. So a lot of our efforts that we do are focused around that capacity building so that we can have strong leaders, strong nonprofits, and strong communities that are really shaping a vibrant community. And so kind of like this loan fund fits within that. So our loan fund is one of another one of the tools that we're making available to organizations to be able to have the kind of capital they need to be able to make the kind of infrastructure improvements they need within their organization and our community. Joining me today as part of our team is Andrea Giron Mathern, our VP of Community Development, Leticia Salinas, our program manager overseeing the loan fund, as well as Carlos Hernandez Tovar, who also is a program assistant who provides support for all of this. So for this initiative, you can contact any of us to be able to support you around this program. Today's agenda, the next slide, please. We will be giving you a kind of like a little background on the loan fund and why it was created. We're going to provide some details of the fund, the loan process, some important dates, and then just open it up to questions. So we're going to try and go through our part, I won't say fast, but we're going to try and go through it pretty quickly, but not too quick that we're missing out information that's critical, but really leaving some opportunity for you all to ask questions around this fund. So next slide, please. So kind of like this loan fund is called the Colorado Communities of Color Loan Fund, or CCLF, and that's what we're referring to at. The way that this came about and why we created this loan fund is that last year during the pandemic, we were having conversations with a lot of our executive directors about how we could best support them. And quite a few times what came up was, can you provide a loan fund for organizations, during the need of the pandemic? But also, I think what we heard was post-pandemic, as organizations look at rebuilding, reimagining their organizations, a lot of times after crisis, money for that kind of infrastructure development is not there. And we all know that communities of color have generally been underfunded, underrepresented with respect to capacity building types of dollars. And so when we look at rebuilding, the resources are not always there. And what we have to go ahead and do a lot of times is kind of like approach the rebuilding of our organizations through a Band-Aid approach. This year we may be able to do that, next year we'll do this, the year after we'll do that. And and trying to figure out how we do that, but sometimes we don't have the resources to do things right from the beginning and integrate them properly because we don't have the resources. So hearing the community a lot, we then started exploring, can we create a loan fund for our community? We started talking to some investors that have invested in communities of color to see if we could establish the loan fund. And we were able to get commitments from the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, the Colorado Trust, and the Colorado Health Foundation. So together with those three, we are launching a pilot 5-year Communities of Color Loan Fund. And the loan fund, like I said, will be over a 5-year pilot period, to really help to see how it is that we can provide this kind of resources to the community. I think with respect to the need piece, and I don't think I have to really go into too much detail with that with you all, because you live it every day, as we do as an unendowed foundation, is that those dollars for like transformative opportunities are hard to come by. We know that we're undercapitalized, and the need for such a fund is critical because it has great benefits, not just to our foundation, to our organizations, but to our communities as well. You know, I think one of the things that we heard in the establishment of this fund was the need for having increased capital, wealth development, economic contributions that nonprofits can have on their community, program expansion, innovative systems and programs, another financial tool. So the benefits to the nonprofits and to the communities could be really great as organizations look at how can they use this fund in very creative and innovative ways to rebuild, to reimagine, to build wealth in their communities. Next slide, please. So we're going to do these funds or these grants in the forms of PRIs. And Andrea will talk a little bit later on about how this is unique and how it is different. But our PRIs will be between 0 to 2%, depending on the type of loan that it'll be. The loan amounts will range from $10,000 to $250,000, 1 to 5 year payoff period. Eligible amount for loan is no greater than 20% of your organization's annual operating budget. So next slide. Some examples that you know, we've heard from folks of how they can use this, and we're trying to be as flexible as possible. We do have some limitations though, but you know, people need money for working capital, whether it's realignment of their strategy, shifting some stuff, bridge funding in some cases, to be able kind of like, yeah, some capital to explore opportunities, just working capital to be able to have those resources. Leadership development, to invest in staff, or even if there's going to be a leadership transition in the coming future and looking to be able to need some resources for that. Capacity building among people, among systems within the organization. Infrastructure investments. A lot of this has been shared with us around the technology piece and folks needing more resources for building the right technological infrastructure for their organizations to be able to grow from. Capital improvements. A lot of you own pieces of property and are looking to go ahead and make some improvements to that. How would you be able to make those improvements? Program growth. And some of you have talked about launching capital campaigns, and can these loans be used for feasibility studies or even acquisition or bridge loans. So we're very open. Like I said, we do have some parameters, but we really want to go ahead and figure out how we can support organizations of color through loans to be able to kind of do the work that they need to. And these are made in forms of loans because what we're looking to do is the money comes back into the organization as it's repaid, it's just putting the money back into the community. And so what we would love to be able to do is to eventually build this up to about a $5 million loan fund that can continually provide capital to our communities. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over now to Andrea, who is going to go over some loan eligibility in the application process.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Carlos. So as Carlos mentioned, you know, it's really open in terms of what you can use this money for, but we do have some eligibility requirements, and so I'll go over those really quickly. So the organization must be based in Colorado or have a Colorado chapter. Must be operating as an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we ask that they've been operating as that 501c3 for at least 3 years. Operating budget of at least 50,000. And as Carlos mentioned, there are some things that process-wise will make this really different, but there are also some things about eligibility that make this loan program different. And that is having a much lower operating budget requirement than some of the other PRI programs that exist in our state. So we hope that this opens avenues for some of those established in terms of time, but growing nonprofits across our state. We ask that you have a track record of delivering effective programs and services for Colorado residents, and that you work in any of the following categories. This, again, is very broad in terms of covering all the different ways that nonprofits serve our communities, but things such as human services, workforce development, education, health, early childhood, environment, food justice, and/or arts and culture. If your nonprofit works outside of these, please reach out to us with any questions. We ask that you serve a population that is 66% or more communities of color, and that your organization is led by BIPOC folks. So this means that your executive director is a person of color. If you have senior staff, that your senior staff and board are 51% or more individuals of color. Next slide. All right, so this is the applicant process. If you know LCFC, you know that our sort of approach to philanthropy is a little bit different, and it really is based on relationships. And so our applicant process also sort of echoes that philosophy. So we're launching the fund. We launched on August 17th, and we engaged with partner organizations to help us spread the word. This isn't just for Latino-led, Latino-serving nonprofits. It's for BIPOC-led, BIPOC-serving nonprofits. So we hope that you heard about this from one of our partner organizations. If not, you have a relationship with us, which is also really wonderful. So prospective applicants will visit our landing page, and there are these sort of clear and simple qualifications that I just outlined for you, and that helps you get the process started. You complete a questionnaire that just takes you through those qualifications, and then if you qualify, you're asked to go ahead and schedule a time with LCFC staff to move on to what we're calling the conversación. And this really is where we just talk, get to know you, your organization, the potential project or idea that you're hoping to fund with these dollars. We'll work with you on sort of gaining a deeper and clear understanding of the scope, the time frame, and any sort of payback options for this loan. Then once we have that conversation, you'll be sent a formal application that will really just be allowing you to provide a narrative of the conversation that we outlined together in that conversación. From there, it moves on into a review and recommendations process. We have an internal team as well as external stakeholders who are helping us take a look at our organizations and making sure that we are really thinking about how to best leverage what you all do as organizations and how to best leverage this fund. And then our board makes final approvals. And then in addition to this is we will offer ongoing support. So you'll have regular contact, proactive contact from us. We'll be able to offer you technical assistance, as well as any kind of capacity building around financial management, financial planning, and any sort of organizational growth that you're going through with these loan funds. So next are the important dates. So I will ask Leti to review these.
Hi, everyone. So our loan, we're really accepting applications on a rolling basis, but we do have, thanks, Loz. But we do have quarterly reviews that happen in February, May, August, and November. So you can submit your application anytime, but this is when we'll be reviewing things. So for this upcoming round, you can go ahead and start. We ask that you start the application process by September 10th. And that just means filling out our initial questionnaire. And I did drop the link to that in our chat. So that's the first step, as Andrea mentioned. Just make sure you fill it out by September 10th. And then if you are eligible, then we'll have the conversaciones that Andrea was talking about pretty much now through the end of September. If you are not ready to apply yet, don't worry, we'll have another round happening again in December. So like I said, we do review them quarterly. So if that September 10th deadline just seems a little too soon, there will be an opportunity to apply later on in the year. So that, Los, can you go to the next slide, please? So that's really it from our end in terms of giving you an overview what this loan fund is meant to do. We're going to actually open it up for questions now that you all may have. And I do see a couple of questions came in already. So there's two ways that you can ask questions. You can raise your hand and then I'll call on you and ask you to unmute yourself and you can ask your question live. Or at the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A button. You can go ahead and click that and type your question instead if you prefer that. So I will go ahead, so you can go ahead and start typing questions, raising your hand, and then I'll have Carlos or Andrea go off mute to answer questions as they come through. So our first question is from Gloria, and she asks, for those who don't know what PRI funds, can you give a quick description?
So a PRI is referred to a program-related investment. And that's a tool that foundations can use in doing loans to nonprofits. So we are not going to take you through kind of like the experience that we've all had when we apply for a loan with, you know, at least I can tell you that in my own personal experience and with organizations that I've ran before, when you're looking for a loan, it becomes a very cumbersome process, a lot of paperwork, and a lot of information that sometimes it just kind of like it disqualifies us, or just the process is very intimidating or not respectful of us, and we just say forget it and we give up. So we'll be using a PRI as kind of like the loan document, but we'll be using kind of like the LCFC, like the grant review process that we use, which is more relational than transactional, to get to know the organization, how it wants to do, what it's applying for, its scope of work. I think Andrea had talked a little bit about that in the process. But the way that we do a lot of our work here at the foundation is that we really get to know you. And that's the key, like, conocimiento piece at the beginning, that really understanding the organization, where is it that you want to go, how a loan plays into it, and, you know, having those conversations, understanding your work, because we want you to be successful. We want you to pay off the loan, and we want you to be able to have used that loan to really leverage other opportunities within your organization.
Thank you, Carlos. I have a couple of questions about loan interest rate. A couple of people are interested in knowing how you will determine the loan interest rate.
Yes. So the loan interest rate, I can tell you that most of, you know, where we're looking at more of a like a 2% interest rate is sometimes for the larger projects, sometimes that require for capital, large, you know, multi-million-dollar capital projects and so forth that require maybe land acquisition, a lot of improvements, and they just require a lot of different pieces, and the money will be tied up for a much longer period. Is where we're looking for that. But if your organization is going to be like typically doing, you know, I'd say typically, but, you know, maybe applying for like a $50,000 loan, so forth, to go ahead and do some systems improvements and things like that, I can tell it's probably generally going to be around the 0% interest.
Thank you, Carlos. And then just to clarify, I saw Stephanie put in the chat. Oh, never mind. You already answered it, Andrea.
Go ahead and clarify for everyone else. That's a great idea.
Okay, so Stephanie just wanted to know, she went ahead and she filled out our questionnaire that has a deadline of September 10th, and then scheduled, her conversación won't happen until September 14th. So don't be alarmed. The only thing we want you to do by September 1st is to actually fill out the questionnaire. And then you might not have a conversación until later, but that's okay. You still qualify for that September 10th deadline that we were talking about. So yes.
You just said September 1st a minute ago. So
September 10th. I'm sorry. Yeah. So just make sure you fill out that initial questionnaire for September 10th. And then your appointment to chat with us will happen in September. So you still qualify as long as you fill out the initial questionnaire by September 10th. So hope that's clear. Yes. All right. Next question. Will eligibility requirements be reviewed for an organization if each one is not met? We meet all requirements except the age of the organization. We received 501c3 status in June 2019, so we're short of the 3 years requirement.
So we are looking for an organizations with 3-year history, but I would say that it doesn't hurt you to go ahead and start reaching out to us, because if maybe you're not eligible for this round, we have another round coming up in Q1 of next year, and it just starts putting you in the pipeline for this. Because I think what, you know, as we look at this is our first time that we're doing something like this. Some organizations, I think as we go through this, I can just tell you based upon our grant making, that sometimes some organizations don't make it the first time around because of certain things, and then we'll have to wait for the next time that we put an RFP. So this could also help us, you know, this could also be the situation here. So I would say that start reaching out right now and start building those relationships with our team so that we know what you're thinking about, how you're looking at this loan opportunity, and you know, if it's a good fit, we'll figure out how it is that we can make it possibly fit for the near future.
Thank you, Carlos. Another question was, how will you determine whether the loan will be for 1 year or longer? So how are we determining the length of the loan?
That's a conversation that we'll be having with each organization. So we will be, actually, that'll be one of the questions that we start asking you first. What are you looking at a repayment schedule for this? So we will be working with you around that. I can probably say that, you know, if you're looking for a $10,000 loan and you're looking for a 5-year payoff and you're like a, you know, $1.5 million organization, we may want a quicker payoff. But let's say you're a $50,000 organization and you're looking at a $10,000 loan and looking at a 5-year payoff, you know, that makes sense. And so we're not going to be very kind of like, you know, that's why we didn't include it in the information. We're going to try and be flexible around this and make it something that works for you all, and where you're successful in paying that back to the fund as well.
Thank you, Carlos. And then I have a question from Monica. Is the TA that was mentioned, will it be offered to help with the payoff to assist with a plan to repay the loan? If not, what is implied in the TA?
So in the technical assistance that we will be providing throughout the year will be financial assistance. So I think, you know, in paying off the loan is making sure that you bring in the revenues and, you know, knowing how to go ahead and book things with, you know, on your side. So the technical assistance that we will provide for you is more around the financial pieces of it. If other things come up during the year that we're finding that we may want to expand our technical assistance, we will look at that. But right now, what we're looking at is just technical assistance around having good financial systems in place for your organization to be able to make good financial decisions.
Thank you, Carlos. And I see Richard Lopez has his hand up. Los, are you able to unmute Richard so he can ask his question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I typed it in. Our board consists of 10 board members. 2 of us are Latinos, including myself, the president of the board. Our executive director is Latino. Taking a look at your initial qualifications, it would seem that we would not qualify. Would that prevent us from having additional discussions?
Unfortunately, Richard, yes. A lot of this money that we received from the three investors, it was specific that this opportunity benefits those organizations that are led by and for BIPOC communities. And so that is actually in our stipulation of our grant agreements with the funders. So there, we do not have a lot of flexibility, I'm afraid of.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, we have a question from Stephanie. Can a loan be paid back by grant monies received or organizational program revenue?
It could be through either way that you all want. You know, let's say, for example, I'm going to make something up, that you're wanting to invest $25,000 in an ECRM system, have new computers, get the right technology so that you can really support your community post-COVID, especially since more people are doing things online. And so you're like, I really, you know, would like to do it all at one time, but I'm going to be going back to funders to fund some of that. I just don't want to wait until I raise all the money at once. And so if you want to come and get a loan for that, you know, we can give you the loan and you can pay it off as your revenue comes in, either through grants that you get or other ways that you end up doing that. But yeah, for us, it doesn't matter which way it comes in.
Then we have a question about fiscal sponsorship, Carlos. Luis wants to know if fiscal sponsors with a or organizations with a fiscal sponsor, whether or not they're eligible to apply for the loan.
So unfortunately, right now, it is only open to organizations with the 501c3. And to see how it goes for us right now. And part of the reason why is that, you know, even though it's a PRI and, you know, it's still a loan, the liability rests on the organization. And what we don't want to get into is the fiscal agent has a responsibility. The organization is the one that's getting the money. They don't follow through. They can't do that. It puts the fiscal agent organization at a liability. And we're trying to avoid that for right now. So for right now, you do have to be a 501c3 to be able to apply for a loan. That could change in the future, but for right now, that is what we have.
Thank you, Carlos. We have one more question. What questions are asked in the screening process? It is great to know what the questions are before starting the form.
I think, you know, as we look at the screening process, it's, you know, how are you going to use the dollars? To really think, you know, think through, have you thought about how you're going to use the loan? Or is it kind of like just, you know, oh, we just want 50,000 because we can go ahead and just like it's a cushion, but we're not quite, you know, if you're not quite sure how you're going to use it and you can't really communicate that to us, it's probably not the right loan for you. In our conversations, if you're able to go ahead and say, you know, I'm looking to look at building new systems of operation for our organization. I need new technology, I need new software, I need new computers. This is going to allow us to do X, Y, Z. We're going to integrate all our operations under one CRM system because right now everything's separate. And we started to look at who can do this and how it's going to look like. So, you know, if you can be able to communicate with us, articulate how this would be used and how your payment back will be done, then I think, you know, that puts you in a really good position for a loan. I think it's when you're not able to articulate really how you're going to be able to use this. You know, we're not using your typical format with loans with a lot of that are usually dictated upon how your financial position is. And that's where a lot of our organizations, especially our small organizations, are excluded because they look at, do we have 6 months of operating revenue? Do we have, other this? Do we have that? Do we have that? And a lot of times the small organizations don't have those financial pieces in place. And so if you don't have some of those financial pieces, we need to understand that you have a really good idea of how this loan will be able to go ahead and complement your strategy for growth, for build out, for working capital, for whatever it is that you're going to use it. We want to know that you really have thought it through and understand that. And maybe you can't really articulate all that well on paper. That's why we want to have a conversation and then work together to make sure that that application is tight as we move forward. But I think that conocimiento piece that Andrea talked is really key, because what we don't want to do also, we don't want to put you through having to fill all this paperwork and where you might not be a good candidate, or if you are a great candidate, help you go ahead and just tighten that the application up a bit.
Thank you, Carlos. And then I see Luis has his hand raised. Luis, do you mind unmuting Luis so he can answer his question, ask his question?
Hi, I'm so sorry. That was an accident. I'm just listening. I don't know how that happened.
All good, no worries. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you. All right, next question is from Monica. And I think you touched on this a little bit, Carlos, but if you could just expand on whether organizations need to have a fully built out plan for paying down the loan when at the time of applying.
No, I think that's one thing we will work with you through. So if you already have that in place and you already thought about it, great. If you haven't, that is something that we will work with you through.
And then one more question, Carlos. I'm curious why LCFC decided to do a loan program instead of providing a combination of rapid response funds to organizations and other long-term capacity building / leadership development grants and investments to organizations that didn't need to be paid off.
So as I mentioned earlier in my conversation, that we see the loan fund as another financial tool for our communities to be able to use. We also give capacity building dollars. We also have given rapid response dollars, but those come, for at least for us, we're a non-endowed foundation. So we have to, every year we have to raise the money that we give out. So we never have like, are able to go into a year with a whole set amount of this is what we have to be able to give out. We did the loan fund for various reasons. But the number one reason is to have this loan fund in perpetuity, where our community can always be able to access this for working capital or other type of capital to be able to use within their organization. We will still continue to provide some capacity building opportunities through some of our other grant making. And we just finished doing a Adelante capacity building cohort where we're working with 23 organizations over the next 3 years to build their capacities. After that's done, we'll open it up to another cohort. So we have various opportunities. This is just another opportunity, but one that is here long-term that our community can rely on for working capital.
I have one more question. It's from Stephanie, and she wants to know if they can use the loan to pay for hiring new staff to help operate the organization's different programs and projects.
Yeah. So you can use it for staff. You can use it for program expansion. I think the thing that we're going to want to do when we have the conversation, I'm imagining that having building the capacity to serve more folks allows you to bring in more revenue. So, but yeah, you can use it for staff, for for capital, for operations, for different parts of the organization. So yes, you can do that.
Okay, I think those were all of the questions, but if I missed anything, please go ahead and put it in the chat, or if anybody has any other questions that weren't answered, go ahead and drop them in there. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up. So I'll just give everybody maybe 30 seconds to answer any other questions or raise their hand before we go to a closing. It looks like Monica raised her hand. Los, would you mind unmuting her, please, or unmuting them?
Hi, this is Monica. Since we have a little bit of time, maybe it's sort of a sad question, but can you talk a little bit about default, or what happens when your ambitious plans don't pan out and you have to pay down this loan? Have you guys contemplated that process?
Yes, we have. And so I think that I'm going to answer it in various forms, Monica, because this is something we really talked about a lot within this loan fund and making it available. We have a practice with just within our regular grants when we give folks a grant and sometimes it's not going the way they need it to go, that we say to you all right away, reach out to us and let's think through how we can help you. So we're hoping that as organizations take on a loan, that they're also taking on something that they can handle and it's not going to be very overwhelming. We're also very open to, let's say, for example, if you have a very ambitious project and you phased it out, that maybe we give you a loan for phase 1 and see how that goes and so forth. And if that's going well, we would consider another loan and just build upon that and look at that so that you're not trying to take on more than what you can as well. So I think one of the things that we want to do is really make everyone successful in this process and really not have to use, a default. I mean, we're also open to re-looking at the loan and maybe different terms or whatever we need to go ahead and do. So we're open to helping you figure out how best to acquire that loan, but also to pay it back. And if things run, because sometimes things, we think something's going to come through and it doesn't, we're here to help you rethink it with you as well. We're not going to be like a bank that says, okay, boom, it was supposed to be paid off by December 31st of this year and you haven't, so therefore these are going to be penalties, and we're not going to be like that.
Thanks for that clarification. Look forward to applying.
Great.
Well, if there are no more questions, I'll hand it over to Andrea and Carlos in case they have any other things to comment on about the questions that were asked. And Los, we can go to the next slide, please.
Andrea, you want to?
Sure. I just want to say thank you. We're so excited to be able to sort of expand the way that we continue to build the infrastructure of nonprofits that are led by and serving our BIPOC communities across Colorado. So we're so excited that you're interested. If you have questions, want to think about, of course, we want to see your application in this funding phase, but as Leti and Carlos mentioned, this is rolling applications. So if there's anything that we can do to help prepare you and your application for any time in 2022, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. That is what we're here for. We, like Carlos mentioned, with sort of, as we've thought about the defaults, our aim in this is to build the capacity, the reach, and the opportunity for organizations. And so that is what our aim and goal is. And so we're here to help you do that. So, we'll be working with you side by side. We have staff members who have time dedicated to working on this loan fund. So apply, reach out. We're really excited and can't wait to get to know you.
Yeah, and just in closing on my side is, this for us is something new as well. It's been about a year in the making and making sure that we've, crossed our T's and dotted our I's. But most importantly, what we also want to do is learn. We want to learn from you all of what it takes to build your capacities. And so as we engage in a relationship with you, for us, it's also about learning and how do we make these opportunities that are usually not available to our communities accessible, and that they work for you all and they really help to elevate your organization, which allows to elevate your communities. So just in closing, I want to say thank all of you for the work that you do every day in and out in your community, in helping our communities have the resources so that they can thrive and they can go ahead and live comfortable lives like we all do. So thank you again for your interest in the Colorado Communities of Color Loan Fund here at the Latino Community Foundation, and we look forward to working with you. Gracias.
I think it's just us. Yes, team?
Liz,
Yeah.
can you just check the attendees list and make sure we close
Yeah,
that
it's
out?
just us now.
Perfect. There we go.
But if you could stop recording, that'd be great. Awesome. Yay, that was great. We had at some point, we had over 20 people on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, good questions too. But you know what? There were good questions there. They weren't, none of you were part of the webinar that we did for the Adelante when we first touched on it, because we did the same thing. And a lot of people asked questions that we talked about during, so we didn't have very many of those, which is really great. So they were really good questions, and it looks like we may have a few other people applying.
Yeah, I think it's great. I did want to clarify. So not the only, you can correct me, Letty, but one of the it doesn't kick you out if you don't have staff and board over 51%, because we had originally said we'd talk to them. We wouldn't boot them out right away. So Monica asked, because all of their staff is BIPOC, they serve well over 66%, BIPOC, but their board isn't all BIPOC. And so I said,